Shabbat Shalom. This might not come as a surprise for some that know me, or maybe it might be a surprise that my relationship with observing Shabbat started out as complicated. A day that was supposed to feel peaceful and nice and calm felt stressful, especially in a home where I was the only one keeping Shabbat in a more traditional way. I was always worried I would do something wrong, that I would break some rule or do some kind of malacha, which is the work that we're not supposed to do on Shabbat, that I wasn't supposed to do. And I would leave the bathroom and instinctively shut out the light, only to feel terrible and annoyed with myself. As I would every other day, I just would leave and shut it off. I still remember the feeling of relief in those early days as Shabbat would end, and I would think to myself, now I don't have to worry about doing anything wrong. It was the opposite of what you would think would happen on Shabbat. There were periods of my life when I lived far away from a Jewish community, and the Shabbat that I had grown to love, the weekly time that I had to come with family and with friends and to immerse in prayer and singing and eating together, it became a time that was more isolated and made me feel lonelier than I was before. And of course, keeping Shabbat made traveling much more complicated, both for me and for my extended family, who I'm grateful to for being so respectful and supportive of my practice, which differs from theirs. It's also not something that I take for granted, but also it's what adds to the complexity of my relationship with Shabbat. Our parsha this morning, Vayakhel, is predominantly about the actual building of the Mishkan, of this tabernacle, a sacred place of worship for the Israelites while they were wandering in the desert, which Stella will share with us a lot more about later this morning. And this is why I was struck by the first 3 lines of the parsha of the reading this morning, because they're not about the tabernacle, they're not about the Mishkan, they're about Shabbat. Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael, and Moses gathers the whole people of Israel, the entire community together. Vayomer alehem eila hadvarim asher tziva Adonai la'asot otam, and he says to them, these are the things that God has commanded you to do. Sheshet yamim ta'aseh melacha, uvayom hashvi'i yiyeh lachem kodesh Shabbat Shabbaton l'Adonai. On 6 days you will work, but on the 7th day you shall have a Shabbat, a complete rest for God, a holy day. Kol ha'oseh vo melacha yumat. Anyone who ever does any work on it shall be put to death. There you go. After reading this, where is she going with this? After reading this, it might be easier to understand where some of my early anxieties around Shabbat and observing the laws may have come from. Really? Capital punishment for not keeping Shabbat? It feels extreme. It feels absurd that the punishment for breaking Shabbat would be death. One of the only stories of capital punishment that we have in the Torah comes later on when a man is collecting sticks on Shabbat and he's killed for it. It feels morally wrong for so very many reasons, and theologically challenging, to say the least. So what do we make of it? How do we wrestle with this idea of Shabbat? And even for those who maybe Shabbat isn't the concept, I'm expanding this to weekends, those times when we unplug, the time that we have to recharge. As I read this pasuk from the Torah, it resonates with me in a very different way this year. I've come to understand that Shabbat is what keeps me alive. There's a well-known quote from Achad Ha'am, who's the founder of cultural Zionism, who said, more than the Jews keep Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews, which speaks to this idea on a communal level, but I've also come to understand just how true this is for me in my own life. It's not that breaking Shabbat will bring me death. It's that keeping Shabbat allows me to live. On a macro level, the state of the world is overwhelming. Since the atrocities of October 7th, the 1,200 lives lost, the sexual violence, the 136 hostages who are still in Gaza over 150 days later, a war against Hamas, which has led to one of the most horrific humanitarian aid crises of our time, the death of tens of thousands of Gazans and hundreds of Israeli soldiers, the thirst, the starvation of millions. A time when anti-Semitism is on the rise, with the ADL reporting that there were over 3,200 cases of anti-Semitism reported in America from October 7th through January 7th. And when we read headlines in the major publications like The Atlantic that say, "The golden age of American Jews is ending. Anti-Semitism on the right and the left threatens to bring to a close an unprecedented period of safety and prosperity for Jewish Americans." A time when it is hard, it is scary, and it is unsettling to be Jewish in our own country. A time of enormous uncertainty around our own political future here in America. A time when we are watching battles unfold not only around reproductive rights, but fertility treatment at large. A time when it feels like all of our morals and our values are on the line. The weight of it all begins to feel unbearable. It's crushing. And on a micro level, you have the grind of the day-to-day. Our obsession with email, texts, WhatsApps, social media, the late night writing or meetings that you might have, the need for more, to be more, to do more, to acquire more, to push and push. The consumerist, capitalist culture we live in, which pushes us to think only of ourselves. The anxieties of the week, the house chores, the cooking, the preparing, the running from meeting to meeting or class to class or activity to activity, the race against time. It's exhausting. It's too much. Our minds are tired, our hearts are tired, our bodies are worn out. Over the years, and now more so than ever, even with all of the complications of Shabbat, Shabbat has become my lifeline. It's the soul. It's the greatest gift that our practice has given me. And more, Shabbat is what sustains me. Shabbat is what keeps me alive. Shabbat is what reconnects me with my values, gives me time to be. It provides both an escape from the world and also a call and a longing for what we can do and what we can create in this world to make it a better place. While it's a complete reworking of the pasuk that we discussed about capital punishment in our parsha, and while it seems extreme to say, I have wondered if I would survive without Shabbat each week. In a more dramatic framing, I do sometimes wonder if I would busy myself into the ground. In a less hyperbolic framing, I ask myself what kind of life I would be living without the pause and peace allotted to me by Shabbat. It feels out of place that our parsha begins with the laws of keeping Shabbat when the entirety of the parsha is about the building of the Mishkan and the ritual that comes with it. Many commentators understand the opening of the parasha this week to be the very moment that Moshe came down the mountain with the second set of tablets. This gathering that Moses creates with the entire community is the first time that Moshe is sharing these new commandments with the children of Israel, and it's the first law that he shares with them is the law about Shabbat. The 13th century biblical commentator, Hizkuni, understands this to be Moses' warning to the people. What appears to be a task of the highest priority, which would be to build this beautiful Mishkan, a dwelling place for God on earth, even this sacred task shouldn't interfere with the regular observance of Shabbat. We learn in our parsha that for 6 days we can and we should build this tabernacle, but on the 7th day, we stop. The rabbis even go so far as to derive the primary 39 categories of forbidden labor on Shabbat from the various tasks in which the Mishkan was put together. On Shabbat, we are forbidden to do any work or any task that mirrors the construction of the Mishkan that we'll see today. As Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel captures so beautifully in his work, The Sabbath, it was on the seventh day that God gave the world a soul, and the world's survival depends upon the holiness of the seventh day. The task, he writes, becomes how to convert time into eternity, how to fill our time with spirit. 6 days a week we wrestle with the world, bringing in profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. The world has our hands, but our souls belong to someone else. Shabbat is both the soul of the world and the day in which we reconnect with our soul, with our morals, with who we want to be as a people and as individuals. It's also the way in which we can keep our souls going. It's not about a specific way of practicing. In fact, I think for a lot of people here, this might not be the group that I need to share it with because you're here right now. And still, I would say there are always ways we can enhance Shabbat and allow for it to keep us alive and connected to our values. And I want us all to ask how Shabbat for us, whether we celebrate it or maybe we want to call it the weekend, how it helps sustain us. How do we allow it to sustain us? How can we add to our Shabbat or weekend practices to deepen our connections with each other, with ourselves, with God, to give us a sense of groundedness, to keep us really living, not just going, but living the way we want to, building the world we want to see. I share this today because I have come to see that for me, Shabbat is one of the most important spiritual tools I have for navigating the pain, the heartbreak, the fear, and the uncertainty of the world. My relationship with Shabbat is the opposite of what it was when I started this practice. Now, my anxiety comes as I leave Shabbat, when I make Havdalah, the ceremony that separates us from Shabbat. As I step into a new week with its uncertainties and its unknowns, the challenges and heartbreaks or stressors, the only thing I am certain of, and which I have come to realize keeps me going, is that Shabbat will come again in just 6 days. But no need to think about that now. For now, let us revel in the blessing and the life-giving force of this sacred time that we have together. Shabbat Shalom.